Cowboys Nation, hold on for a second because something just happened in the NFL that might quietly reopen one of the wildest possibilities Dallas fans have been dreaming about. And before we break this whole thing down, hit that subscribe button, because on this channel we cover Cowboys news the second it drops, and trust me, you're going to want updates if this situation starts heating up. Because the Myles Garrett conversation that many people thought was completely dead might not be dead at all anymore. Now let's slow this down and explain what actually happened, because the details here matter and the timing is everything. The Cleveland Browns and star pass rusher Myles Garrett recently agreed to adjust parts of his contract. Not a simple restructure like teams do every offseason. This was a modification that both sides had to approve, which immediately got the attention of league watchers. And when that news surfaced, a lot of people started asking the same question. Why would Cleveland do that if Garrett is supposedly untouchable? On the surface, it sounds harmless. The Browns basically pushed back the timing of several massive option bonus payments that were scheduled in the coming years. Those payments were originally expected to hit earlier in the league calendar, but now the timeline stretches much further out, almost right up to the start of the regular season. So Garrett still gets his money, the guarantees remain in place, nothing about his total earnings really changes, but the structure changes. And sometimes in the NFL, structure is the entire story. Because here's the part that's making people raise their eyebrows. When teams adjust contracts like this, it often creates flexibility. Flexibility for the team to maneuver later, if they decide to. Flexibility that didn't necessarily exist before. And while Cleveland insiders are saying publicly that they have no plans to trade Garrett, the move itself quietly keeps the possibility alive longer than it was before. That's the key. Because if those bonuses had been paid out on the original schedule, trading Garrett this year would have been almost impossible financially. The dead money would have been enormous. We're talking about a number so big it would cripple a roster. No team willingly eats that unless they absolutely have to. But now, the math changes depending on the timing. And this is where the calendar becomes extremely important. Before early summer, moving Garrett would still be incredibly painful for Cleveland's salary cap. It wouldn't make much sense, but once you cross that post-June 1st threshold, suddenly the cap hit can be spread across multiple seasons instead of crushing the team in 1 year. And that's a massive difference. We're talking about the type of financial shift that turns something impossible into something merely difficult. And difficult in the NFL? That's doable if the right offer comes along. Now, let's bring this back to the Cowboys because this is where things get really interesting. Dallas has already shown they're willing to swing big for elite defensive talent. We saw it when they chased Max Crosby earlier in the offseason. Multiple offers reportedly went out. Dallas was aggressive. They didn't land him, but the message was clear. The front office is willing to explore blockbuster moves if the opportunity is right. So, the moment Myles Garrett's name re-enters the conversation, you have to at least ask the question, would Dallas pick up the phone? And honestly, how could they not? We're talking about arguably the most dominant defensive player in football, a guy who changes the entire identity of a defense the second he steps on the field. When Garrett lines up, offenses panic. Protection schemes change. Quarterbacks rush their reads. Offensive coordinators lose sleep all week trying to figure out how to slow him down. And the crazy part is he still produces insane numbers despite being the main focus of every blocking scheme. This isn't just a good player. This is the kind of defender who takes over games. The type of player Cowboys fans haven't truly seen since the prime years of DeMarcus Ware. Think about that for a second. Pairing a player like Garrett with the talent Dallas already has on defense would instantly turn the Cowboys into one of the most feared pass-rushing units in the entire league. And yes, Garrett is around 30 years old, but if you watch him play, you'd never guess it. His explosiveness is still there. His strength is still ridiculous. His production hasn't slowed down. Some players age differently, and Garrett looks like one of those rare Iron Man-type athletes who can dominate well into his 30s. But let's be real about something, because this is where things get complicated for Dallas. The price tag would be massive. We're not talking about a mid-round pick or even a single first-rounder. If Cleveland ever seriously considered trading Myles Garrett, The conversation would start with multiple first-round picks, probably 2 at minimum, possibly more depending on the bidding war. That's the reality when you're dealing with a generational pass rusher who is still playing at an elite level. Teams don't give those players away, and the Cowboys would have competition. There would be a line of contenders calling Cleveland the second this becomes even slightly realistic. So then the question becomes, would Dallas actually pull the trigger if the opportunity appeared? Would you trade 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett? Maybe even more. That's the debate Cowboys fans are already starting to have. Because while Garrett would instantly elevate the defense, Dallas also has other needs: depth issues, offensive questions, future roster planning. Giving up a haul of picks always has consequences. But here's the part nobody is talking about enough. The contract Garrett carries is actually extremely manageable for the team acquiring him in the short term. The Browns already pushed a lot of the cap weight into future years through option bonuses and structure tricks. That means the team trading for him wouldn't be taking on some outrageous cap hit immediately. In fact, the first few seasons would look pretty reasonable for a superstar defender. That's why the idea is even being discussed at all. Now, flip back to Cleveland's side for a second. Why would they even consider moving a player like this? Well, officially they say they wouldn't. But unofficially, there are always bigger plans happening behind the scenes in the NFL. Some analysts think Cleveland might be thinking long-term about future draft capital. Others think they might want flexibility if they ever decide to reshape the roster. And there's also the possibility that this entire situation is just about keeping options open rather than committing to a decision right now. Because in today's NFL, optionality is power. You don't close doors unless you absolutely have to. By modifying Garrett's contract, the Browns basically left the door cracked open instead of slamming it shut. And that alone has restarted the conversation league-wide. Now, does that mean a trade is likely? No. Let's be clear about that. Many reports around the league still suggest Cleveland intends to keep him, and there's a strong chance he never leaves the Browns at all. But the difference is this. Before the contract tweak, a trade this year was essentially impossible. Now it's technically possible, even if the odds are small, maybe 5%, maybe less. But in the NFL, 5% chances sometimes become reality faster than people expect, especially when a desperate contender decides to go all in. And you better believe if Garrett ever truly becomes available, the Cowboys would at least explore it, because Jerry Jones has never been afraid of a blockbuster headline. The bigger question is whether Dallas has the trade assets needed to actually win that bidding war. The Cowboys have first-round picks, sure, but their draft capital situation isn't as flexible as some other teams around the league. And if the Browns prefer young defensive players as part of a deal, that could complicate things even further. So the timing could matter more than anything. If a move happened before the draft, Dallas might have a clearer shot using picks. If it happens later in the summer, the market could become more crowded and creative. That's why this situation is fascinating to watch. Not because a trade is guaranteed, but because the door that was once completely sealed has now been cracked open just enough for speculation to sneak through. And when the player involved is someone as dominant as Myles Garrett, even a tiny opening gets the entire NFL talking. So right now, the Cowboys probably remain on the outside looking in, but the story isn't finished yet. The calendar matters. The contract structure matters. And the league always has surprises waiting around the corner. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe Cleveland keeps their superstar and this whole discussion fades away. But if that door opens even a little wider, you can bet the Cowboys will at least peek inside. And honestly, Cowboys Nation, would you want them to? Would you trade multiple first-round picks to bring the best pass rusher in football to Dallas? Or is that price just too steep no matter how good the player is? That's the debate right now. And it's one that could get louder depending on what happens in the coming months. At the end of the day, this contract adjustment didn't guarantee anything. But it did revive a conversation that looked completely finished before. The possibility of Myles Garrett changing teams is no longer zero. And in the NFL, sometimes that's all it takes for a blockbuster story to start building momentum. So keep your eyes on this one because if anything changes, Cowboys Nation will want to know immediately. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Tell me if you'd make the trade or pass on it, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe because we'll be tracking every Cowboys move, rumor, and breaking update as it happens.